Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by hunky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to discuss a little bit of movie news and dish some film reviews. And boy, is there a lot of movie news to talk about this week. Oh my gosh. But with me, as usual, are my co-hosts, Jim Pliofko. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here as well. How do you follow up that sexy voiceover, Will? I don't even know.
I was just thinking the same thing. Like Jim really turned it on this week. Hello, welcome back, everyone. Hope you've got a nice brandy, sitting by the fireplace, ready to listen to the Movie Bears podcast.
'Cause I'm gonna sex you up.
Ooh, we're gonna shove some, shove some podcasting into your ear holes.
You guys got to understand, right? When I edit the show every week, I have to listen to my own voice back. Like constantly, I'm like, what can I do to make myself sound at least different? If not better, then at least different. So we're gonna go deeper.
You could put on like an accent. You could totally. Oh my gosh! You should let your Boston accent out, Jim.
Okay, maybe next episode because I'm all about the what is it? What am I looking for? Continuity. The consistency. I'm all about the consistency in the show.
So you're afraid someone might skip ahead to the 2-minute mark in the episode and be like, "Wait a minute, that guy had a deep voice, and now he's a Bostonian. What is this? I'm not going to keep listening."
Like Kate Winslet in Steve Jobs, how that accent kept coming and going. I can't criticize her for doing that and then do it myself.
Just like her Oscar chances.
That would be right.
Oh goodness! Oh goodness! Well, speaking of which, we are going to be talking a little bit about the Oscars. For us, as we're digital taping this, they happened just last night, but you may be listening on digital tape delay on Wednesday or Thursday. So, relatively speaking, it may be farther away for you, but it's still fresh for us. So we're going to talk about it. We're also going to review Gods of Egypt, starring Jamie Lannister and a bunch of other white folk, and that's getting some controversy. So I think, I don't know. That's going to be an interesting discussion. But first things first, Oscars. Yes, is that where we want to kick things off? Jim, are you on board with that?
Yeah, let's talk about the Oscars. I mean, last week we kind of did our preview show, and we went, we kind of went through all the big categories and kind of gave our picks of what we thought was going to win versus our should wins and our will wins and all that stuff, and it all came down to it. So we've got some, now that we're not one day, not even 24 hours after the show, we can talk about those results, some of the highlights.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what was the biggest surprise of the night for you guys? Let's start there.
I think from an awards perspective, the biggest surprise of the night was actually one of the below the line, so to speak, awards, visual effects. So the story of the first half of the Oscars last night was, if it's at all technical, Mad Max wins it, right? Which was great. I had that on my scorecard, and I was cleaning up. But the Visual Effects Award actually went to Ex Machina, which was a film that I think a lot of people, even myself, didn't think really stood a shot at winning. I'm very happy that it did. I think it's a solid film with very solid effects, and I love the fact that, in this case, the Academy is able to recognize something that's not necessarily giant with big explosions and lasers and stuff like that, which were quite good in this category as well, don't get me wrong, but that they're also able to recognize smaller sci-fi. So this was a surprise to me, but a welcome one.
Yeah, you know why it happened though, right?
No, we don't. Clue us in.
It's
because
totally
we don't know why anything at the Oscars happens.
It's totally because of all the android boobs. That's what it was. That's where that came from. I'm pretty sure.
Android boobs. Put it over the hump.
Do Android stream of electric boobs?
And there was Android Snatch. Don't forget about the Android Snatch.
Oh, so why did I like this movie?
Electric boobs and a mohair suit.
Yeah. Electric Boobaloo.
Oh God!
Well,
And that's your sequel.
I that was a surprise to me too. When I think back on it, I'm like, how the hell did that movie win that? Especially given, like you said, Will, the juggernaut that Mad Max Fury Road was on with most of the other technical awards, which was also one of the highlights of the night, right? One of the stories, I guess, to come out of it was all of the technical awards, almost all of the technical awards, I guess, to Mad Max Fury Road, which as the night went on, you knew, like, okay, this movie's not going to win any major awards, because that's typically how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I think back on Ex Machina, and there were some pretty impressive, effects in that movie. Some of the effects to the let's say one of the main characters was pretty cool. But I don't know how you stand that up against something like Mad Max or was the Force
I
Awakens.
think The Force
You know,
Awakens, Revenant was in that
Right.
category.
yeah,
I forget what
I
the
just
second one was.
I just don't. I mean, that one kind of put it this way. Will, I'm happy. I'm happy that Ex Machina, which was one of the better movies of the year overall, got recognized for something. I just don't. I just don't. I just can't wrap my head around how it popped out that award, given the competition that it was up against.
That's
So
fair enough.
it's just kind of weird. I'm happy it won, but I scratch my head on that one.
Brad, what was one of your biggest surprises?
For me, it was probably, I'll just say Best Picture. I really thought Revenant was going to sweep that one, and it didn't. And I think I almost wanted to like rewind it to see if they, like if I just heard it wrong, because we had like 35 people in our house last night. It was crazy. It was very loud, and I was like, oh, I totally must have misheard that. Let's rewind. But no, Revenant didn't take it, and not that I wanted Revenant to take it. I'm actually glad something that wasn't Revenant won. I'm just surprised.
Yeah, it was. This has been one of the most up in the air best picture races that we've had in quite a while. Like most years, you can kind of predict it, or like you know that it's maybe down to two films. But really, going into tonight, because of what we saw with the Producers Guild and the Directors Guild and the SAG Awards, like everything was going so many different directions. It was Revenant was coming into it as a heavy favorite, but both Spotlight and The Big Short were there in the mix as well. And yeah, I got this one wrong. I was predicting Revenant,
Right.
and I'm very happy Spotlight won. I would have been happy if Revenant won. I would have been happy if Big Short had won. It's one of those nice things where like where all the front runners are films that you absolutely enjoy. You can kind of sit back and just enjoy the outcome as it comes.
Mm.
Yeah, for me, I mean, that was a big surprise, but the biggest surprise of the night for me, the one that kind of knocked me out of my chair, was the one, what I thought was, I mean, besides, Leonardo DiCaprio winning for Best Actor, which was no surprise really to anybody, but it was the big story of the night and a fairly good speech that he gave, was the Best Supporting Actor to Mark Rylance over Sylvester Stallone.
Oh,
That
yeah.
knocked me out of my seat. I think everybody was kind of, I mean, we know that Mark Rylance did a good job and we commented on it right on this show.
Yeah.
But we just, I mean, given Stallone's performance, which was also really great, the movie that it was in, which was Creed, which wasn't really getting a lot of other attention from the awards, and also the kind of the nostalgia factor, right, of
Right.
Sylvester Stallone coming in and taking an award. I really kind of wanted to see his acceptance speech. I thought that would have been kind of if I was banking on one other award besides Leo DiCaprio, it would have been that one. And it was a surprise. And kudos to Mark Rylance for his performance in Bridge of Spies. I just felt like we kind of got robbed of a Sylvester Stallone moment.
Yeah, this one was a hard one for me. Of the four acting awards, I had the Best Actor, Best Actress, and Supporting Actress all as locks. And this was the one that I was up in the air on. And I was like, you know what? Stallone has like a really good chance at taking this. I had a hunch that maybe Rylance would come out of nowhere and take it. I put Stallone on my scorecard, and I'm suffering that, for getting that one wrong. But this one was less of a surprise for me, just because I really debated back and forth between the two. I could have seen it going both ways, just kind of from reading the temperature of things. Plus, this was one where Mark Rylance was my we talked about it last episode, my heart pick. And that weighed into it quite a bit as well. So I'm very happy that he won this one. Nothing against Stallone. I thought he was stellar. But I'm happy with Rylance's win.
I do think it's funny that it came down to two people who have porn experience.
Hey, so this you're saying that I have a shot at an Oscar, right?
I'm missing something. Am I missing something?
Well, Stallone did porn, and Mark Rylance was in a movie called Intimacy, where he had a full frontal, like, erect, real, not simulated sex scene with a girl.
Yeah.
Several years ago. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. But
this is one I do not remember.
Unfortunately, they didn't show those in their highlight reels.
I know, right?
Right?
I know, right? Yeah.
Anyway.
Speaking of highlight reels, one thing that I thought, and I guess kind of not, we talk about the awards, of course, when we're talking about the award show, but I think there's also kind of the way that they present them as a thing to talk about. And I thought that they did something a little different with their camera work this year. During their montages and during the way that they kind of highlighted, like, best actor, best actress. With
how it panned to the different, like, panels. I noticed that.
And it was something where it was like, I mean, honestly, when you're talking about award shows, it really is just like, say a category and then a bunch of people talk. They're not. You have to have something to kind of keep people interesting. Otherwise, it becomes very samey. And while I have some criticisms about the some of the humor that we saw later on, and we'll talk about that, I guess, in a second. But I liked the way they tried some different things with the camera work. I thought that was neat enough. It kept my interest.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that too, and I think it helped short. They did a couple of things to help shorten the show this year. That was one of them, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they actually used to show clips of the performances for the acting, for the four main acting categories, I believe. And that takes time, right? As opposed to somebody coming out and saying, "Here are the nominees." They're a mother that's been kidnapped and locked in a room with her son, blah, 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 and just showing the panels on the wall.
But I thought they did still play clips.
They played clips of. It depended on the category. They did play clips. They played clips for the acting.
I'm pretty sure they did.
And I remember that because there was one. I think it was the one they did for a Best Actor when DiCaprio did his, and it was him, like, speaking in, like, the Native American language. And I remember thinking just how bizarre that was, like, of all the different scenes, like him talking to his son in, like, whatever Native, like, even when it panned back to him, like, there's this look on his face, like, that was my
why would you pick that? Yeah.
So they did both. They did the clips and then the introduction.
They did.
Yeah, they did, but they did them so everything moved a lot. By Oscars, I guess terms, a lot more quickly than before. Like, it felt like they really whipped through the scenes. They were really truncated to where you only got to see, like, a really quick, like, you didn't see a full exchange. You just got to see someone like, "I'm standing up on the chair and I'm angry." Everyone applauds. Move to the next person.
Right.
I did see that one thing they did that I also read about, and I didn't even really notice this that much, that there was a ticker, I guess, on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
That I guess what they did is they they must have asked the nominees ahead of time for their, for the people who worked, who they would like to thank. And they put those in the ticker so that the speeches could focus on other things. You know what I mean? They didn't have to read. Nobody really read a huge list of names that I remember. Because they knew that they were all being covered there, so they were told to, keep it to the special mentions and personal experience, which I thought was really helped out with the acceptance speeches.
And it gave plenty of time to talk about things like climate change and fighting big business. So I mean, it was perfect.
That's right.
What was nice was it felt like, with, like, two notable exceptions, they really kept to like their 45-second speeches really well. Like a lot of years, you have a lot of people, especially in the early parts of the night, like this may be my only chance to ever get an Oscar, so I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to thank everybody. I'm going to do everything. But I guess because of that ticker, people felt less like if they didn't say the words that they wouldn't be able to thank their friends or family. So they really were able to stick to that 45 seconds. Inarritu went really long. I noticed like he uses that. Inarritu gave absolutely zero fucks when that Oscar music played. He was like, nope, I'm going to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to make a three-peat.
Oh, that would, I mean, honestly, I think there's only, and I could be wrong, but I think the last time we've had a back-to-back director was it Mankiewicz? Is that his name?
Don't know.
Yeah, back in like the 50s or something like that. It's been a long time. So,
we did have a three-peat with cinematography. Right?
Yeah, cinematographer was Lubeski, Chivo. Good on him for that. Like I'm very happy. Honestly, he's my favorite cinematographer. I think he's a lot of people's favorite cinematographer. I feel really bad for Roger Deakins.
And he gets another bridesmaid.
Yeah, this is. I mean, he really is the Susan Lucci. Like, or at this point, people need to start making like a bunch of memes about how Roger Deakins doesn't get Oscars, so that next year, like, he can get the Oscar. Kind of like with what happened with Leo.
Oh yeah,
kind of.
Oh, what you sharing there, Brad?
Hey guys, quick shout out. So wanted to just say hey to longtime listener Paul Alderete, who we're gonna see in like 11 days. He is watching from his car. So if you are watching,
he better be.
You are watching. Hopefully he is. But look at that giant thing between his legs. Oh my gosh, that's a thick.
That's
steering wheel.
That's a steering wheel.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, Paul's great. I had a chance to with him and some of the San Antonio movie bears see The Witch. I got to see it with them this last week, and it was an absolute blast. Those are just delightful human beings.
We saw that video that was done. It's kind of like a travel log documentary short, and it was really cool. It was great. It was like being there with you guys, except not in the movie, of course, when you have to turn it off, but everything else. It was really cool seeing you guys do that. Made me want to be there.
Paul's great. Paul's absolutely great. Mm-hmm. I guess I have one last Oscar question. I mean, there's so many categories here, and we could go all night on this, but they're going to start playing the music pretty soon and play us off. But,
Brad will play the music.
I think we can't really talk about the Oscars without talking about the host and his, how he did. Was it funny? Did it work? And so we had Chris Rock this year as our host, and because of all the controversy with the Oscars so white hashtag and all of that, we got to see a lot of that play into the monologue itself and through some of the skits and some of the things throughout the course of the show. And for me, I thought the humor in the monologue worked really, really, really well. I think that he really nailed it there. There were some skits that didn't work. Was that the music?
Yeah.
The Girl Scout cookies thing was a waste of time, and the fact that they kept going back to it was a problem. But I guess more than anything, the thing that I found is kind of problematic. That's that very Tumblr-ish word that we throw around a lot. But he had this joke at one point where he trotted out some kids, and it was basically like a joke about like. It was basically kind of like
another diversity joke. What do you know?
Yeah, but it wasn't really a diversity joke as much as it was like it was kind of like a Jewish Asian joke. Like which felt actually like the opposite. Like this was a show that was supposed to be like, hey guys, let's be inclusive. But I felt like the more and more the night went on, I felt like we didn't really focus as much on like Latino actors, or we didn't really focus as much on LGBT. I didn't feel like we talked about Asians. I think we made some tasteless jokes about Jewish people. I felt like the idea of the Oscars so white thing, which really was an interesting platform and an interesting thing to discuss, I think turned just into and through the skits and through the comedy itself, like why are there not more black actors? Which certainly there certainly should be more, but I feel like they left out a lot of other people as well, and that was a problem for me. Like I wish the inclusion was more inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. it kind of bothered me because it's like I get it, and I'm not happy about it. You know what I mean? But it's like how much focus do we really need? I guess. I don't know. I just felt like a lot of the commentary and jokes were were really more playing into stereotypes than they were about like, hey, let's break down these walls. Let's build this thing back up. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was just didn't really work very well for me.
I agree with you, Brad. I thought the monologue worked fine. I thought there were some cool analogies that he put out there, in a comical way, and I thought it all worked. As the night went on, the focus on lack of diversity and the jokes around lack of diversity, whatever they were, got really stale. They got really old, and it was like, okay, are there other topics of comedy and film that we can bring in to make this funny? Does everything have to be, everything said either from Chris Rock or from presenters or whatever have to be focused on the controversy and that. And I understand what they're trying to do, but I think they kind of overshot a little bit, and maybe overcompensated to try to, hey, let's show everybody, how we recognize the problem and not necessarily how we're going to address it, because that's a much bigger issue. But we're, that we're aware of it, and we're at least to that point where we're aware of it, where maybe going forward they can start to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, when you bang the drum this loudly, like I think it does start the change that you need to have. I mean, we already heard about some of the different changes to the Academy itself, their membership and such. I think that this does put it more in the spotlight, so that when people cast films in 2017 and so on, I think it's going to be a lot harder to hide behind, like, we just thought this person was the best actor, when it's just like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. But I think for me, from the ceremony itself, like, I didn't have as much a problem with it being kind of the theme, because that was the theme on everyone's mind going into this.
Right.
Like, there were a lot of people that like boycotting the Oscars or like making jokes about it or what have you. Like, so I didn't have as much a problem with that, but I did feel like it really left out a lot of people. Like, our only major, like, hey, we're an LGBT podcast, and the only real gay-centric thing that I can think of the entire night, and I'm probably missing something, was a I watched lesbian porn joke from Chris Rock and Sam Smith claiming to be the first openly gay Oscar recipient. Like, I feel like that's kind of what we got, and that was, again, that feels weird for me on a night that's supposed to be about, hey guys, let's be more inclusive, for us to get a stale lesbians or hot joke and Sam Smith like not knowing gay history.
But that's the thing. I mean, Will, and I understand exactly what you're saying, but not every joke has to be centered on diversity or race. And not every point that's made has to be about diversity or race. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be about LGBT issues or Black American issues or gay or Asian American issues. Can we get off that and get on to film stuff? You know what I mean? That would be much better.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I'm just saying, like, of the content that we got that was based on the Oscar So White stuff, I feel like if you were to divvy that up a little bit more amongst, like, the different underrepresented groups, it would have been, I think for me, I would have liked to have seen something more than just like, if Sam Smith hadn't said what he said, the only thing we would have gotten for us would have been Chris Rock making like a tasteless lesbian joke.
We just got a live comment from our buddy Sam from Kansas, who says hashtag gay Oscars matter.
Yes.
Gay
hashtag Oscars so straight.
Right.
Thanks, Sam Smith.
Yay, Sam.
Yeah.
Oh boy, yeah. My goodness. I'm sure there's more we could talk about, but I don't know.
Yeah, those are all of my major items.
I did like the pokes that Chris Rock gave to the boycotters, right? Although I was a little disappointed that Spike Lee got as much screen time as he did in that one little one little clip that they were showing there. I forget what it was some retrospective or
The
something.
governor's awards, I think, right?
So it's just kind of odd that he, got that much screen time in an award ceremony that he was actively boycotting, and also encouraging other people to boycott. I don't know. It just felt odd to me. Like, are they trying to suck up to him, or what are they doing?
Well, I have a theory.
Hard.
I don't know. My theory is that such a big deal was made out of him, like boycotting the Oscar show. I almost feel like they were trotting that footage out to circumvent that a little bit. To be like, well, he's not coming to this show, but look, he sure showed up for the governor's awards. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I felt like they were trying to sort of combat his shunning of the actual show.
And also, I mean, when you talk about the governor's awards, usually it's talking about like 2 or 3 very highly notable people receiving like a lot of like praise. So you couldn't not show him. If that's who you're giving the governor's award to, like you either cut that segment entirely,
right,
or you show quite a bit of him.
Which I probably would have done.
When you think about like kind of like notable black filmmakers in a year where that's kind of a big thing, like I mean, Spike Lee's created some of the most powerful films.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I didn't have as much a problem with that. I would recommend, if you haven't had a chance to see it, or if you didn't watch it last night, go check out the Lady Gaga performance. It's probably on YouTube now. She performed "Till It Happens to You" from the documentary The Hunting Ground, which is quite good. You should check it out. It's on Amazon VOD, I believe. But it was a really powerful performance, and I felt it really redeemed her after a very clumsy David Bowie thing at the Grammys this last year.
It was a good performance for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She was wearing that whiteout dress, right, Jim?
Yeah. Everybody at our party was commenting on whether she was going to wear the meat dress or something else this time.
So, instead, because she did something. She surprised us by wearing a tasteful dress for a tasteful performance.
I joked that it was a dress made out of dried sheets of whiteout.
Oh goodness! All right. Well, guys, we still have a movie to discuss.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
Yes, we do. This should. Oh, wait, I'm looking at the movie we're gonna review. Oh, shit. Oh no. Oh God, no. Let's do it.
It might not be all that bad.
Praise be to the gods. No.
Oh boy. Well, we've got some new folks watching live right now. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Sean. Hey Sean, glad you're watching. Howdy, hope you're doing well. Sean has never watched a show before, so for folks like Sean,
hi, Sean,
who may be unfamiliar with our format, we're going to talk about Gods of Egypt, totally spoiler-free for probably 10 or 15 minutes. And, if you're curious if this movie's worth going to see or not, I don't know if Will's reaction has given it away quite yet. But we'll talk about it spoiler-free, give you some advice, and then we'll give fair warning before we go into spoilers. So with that said, here we go, our discussion of Gods of Egypt. So there's a little bit of controversy with this movie, Jim, I think. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there's at least a couple of points of controversy surrounding this movie. Before the movie opened and as it opened, there was the whole, we talked about the Oscars So White issue and, issues with Hollywood. A lot of people were trotting this movie out as a prime example of what's wrong with Hollywood casting, and this movie has been quote-unquote whitewashed in certain areas. Not sure I agree 100% with that, but this movie does have its issues both in that area and in other areas. One of the other areas that this movie has a problem in is it's been released to terrible box office numbers against its budget. Its budget was like $150,000, and it made like a tenth of that in its opening weekend, which is going to be a problem. This movie is not going to have legs, and primarily one of the reasons is because it's been received pretty terribly by critics. So the director, a guy by the name of Alex Proyas, who has given us films like The Crow, I, Robot, and another movie called Dark City, which I did not see yet. But I mean, in that range of movies, there's some good and some bad, I guess. But he had taken to Facebook over the last weekend, I think, with a rant of his own about film critics, and mostly the film critics who really has trashed his movie. I think it right now sitting around 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, something like that. So pretty bad. So I'm just gonna I'm not gonna read the whole rant. It's very long, but I'm gonna excerpt some of it for you guys, and then we can talk about it. He starts off by saying, "Nothing confirms rampant stupidity faster than reading reviews of my own movies." And he says he usually tries to avoid the experience, but this one takes the cake. So then he goes on to berate critics. He says, "You see, my dear fellow Facebookers, I have rarely gotten great reviews on any of my movies, especially by reviewers who think." Except for reviewers who think for themselves and make up their own opinions. So what he's getting at is that a lot of reviewers these days are not kind of making their own opinion. He goes into the whitewash thing, which I'm sure we'll talk about, so I'm going to leave that out. He says, in this modern age of texting, will probably make critics go the way of the dinosaur or the newspaper shortly. He says, don't moviegoers text their friends with what they thought of a movie? And I think what he's saying there is, hey, that's what we're getting down to at some point, is it's just going to be all Twitter and Facebook and whatever comment consensus about criticisms of movies and not actual reviews by critics. We'll see if that happens. We'll see. He says, just surf the net to read other reviews or what bloggers are saying. No matter how misguided an opinion of a movie might be before it actually comes out, lock a critic in a room with a movie no one has even seen, and they will not know what to make of it. Because contrary to what critics should probably be, they have no personal taste or opinion because they are basing their reviews on the status quo. None of them are brave enough to say, I like it if it goes against the consensus. Therefore, they are less than worthless. Now that anyone can post their opinion about anything, from a movie to a pair of shoes to a hamburger, what value do they have? Nothing. And lastly, he says, so now we have a pack of diseased vultures pecking at the bones of a dying carcass, trying to peck to the rhythm of the consensus. I applaud any film goer who values their own opinion to not base it on what the pack mentality says is good or bad. So
you know what? So this, I was not even aware that this was happening until you brought it up, Jim. Like, I've been totally offline, I guess, and didn't see it. Mm-hmm. But I will say this is making me think about the gem phenomenon all over again. Mm-hmm. Like how easy it is to not see a movie and jump on the internet hate bandwagon, right? And just burn it to the ground without forming your own opinion. So, I mean, I'm happy to honestly, critique a movie, but usually that's because I've seen the film and I want to thoughtfully talk about it. But I mean, I kind of agree a little bit in some ways.
I'm going to go on the other side of it and say I kind of disagree with him. And what I mean by that is, okay, there's a few different, he had quite a few points, and so there's a lot to kind of unpack there. That's that crazy word there. First of all, I think the difference between critique and review is a major thing. I don't think we'll ever be free of movie critics or art critics or music critics, because critique is really more about where something places in terms of cinematic history, what's its impact, how it impacts other different things, how it bleeds into the rest of the genre. You can critique multiple films, whatever. What we do is film review, and I think that's what he's getting at here. Film review is very much, more than anything, a consumer-based idea, right? Because films are both art and they're also a commodity. They're something that we can appreciate because of their artistic merits, and they're something that we plunk down our $10 at the Cineplex for. And so a lot of what review does is it takes a film that has just recently come out in theaters, and we say, hey, here's why you should or should not spend your hard-earned money on that. And yes, word of mouth is becoming more and more a part of that. You see that with traditional products as well, like physical media of whatever it is. You can go to a restaurant or a storefront and find their Yelp page and find out like why you should or should not because of word of mouth. But that's I find it really suspect that this film is getting very, very negative reviews, and he immediately throws up the red flag about reviewers itself. We're going to talk a little bit about the whitewash thing. I think that's a problem in this film. I think that is certainly a problem with this film. But even if it wasn't, I think this would still be a bad film. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that are reviewers just like us that would probably say the same thing. So it really does feel very suspect to me that he raises this red flag right now. Certainly there are situations where people jump the bandwagon too soon. Jim was an awful movie. But I saw the movie before I said that, and there were people that said this is going to be an awful movie before they saw it at all. From a marketing perspective, if a film does a poor job of marketing its product, if they do shitty trailers with a bunch of white actors in a movie based in Egypt, after a film a year ago received very heavy criticism for the exact same thing, I don't fault people for saying, I don't want to see this movie because it's doing all of these things poorly. We see a lot of movies here on this podcast because we see a lot of movies for this podcast, but some people maybe only go see a movie once every 2 or 3 months, and if they don't want to spend their money on a film because the marketing did not do its trick, then that's on the marketing side. That's on the filmmaker's side. So I there's a part of me that kind of gets what he's saying, but I also think that he's really mixing up a few different things here. This is a bad film, and I don't know. I just have a real problem kind of buying into the heart of it.
So he's lashing out. His film's getting trashed by critics. It's getting trashed at the box office. He's angry, and I guess I can understand that, right? I mean, he probably poured a lot of effort into this, and it didn't turn out to please the majority of the audience. However, I do feel he is making some valid points. One of them is, yes, you don't want to criticize a movie before it comes out, or bias against or toward a movie before it comes out, maybe. But I've seen it when, I'll give you another example. The Good Dinosaur was a film that was fairly well reviewed. It was in the 70 to 80% Rotten Tomatoes score. But if you read some of the reviews, and I read a lot of the reviews, a lot of the negative ones say the same things.
Right.
Almost like there is a hive mentality out there, and critics read other critics' stuff. I read other criticisms. I try not to use them, but it's hard not to be biased against a film in a certain way, even by other critics. Like The Good Dinosaur. Oh, it's like The Lion King and Finding Nemo, or don't like the cartoony dinosaurs against the realistic background, or oh, it's definitely not Pixar's best, like In-N-Out and Toy Story. Those are 3 things that I read at least 20 times in 20 different reviews. And there is a hive mentality out there, and critics are influencing other critics. And I think he's kicking back on that a little bit. I think all he's saying is don't be afraid to say you like a movie if you like the movie. Right. You're right. This movie I did not like. There were some things about it I will praise, but in general, this is not a movie I can recommend to go see.
Right.
And we'll talk about those things in detail, but I can't say everything he writes here and every point he makes is wrong. It isn't. And I do. Do I worry about the future of film criticism? Nah, because we do it for fun. We don't make a living at this. I don't care if it goes away. It goes away. I'm still going to talk about movies for fun, because that's how I see this. I don't see myself as necessarily a bona fide film critic. Jim Pugliafco.
Well,
I don't do that. I don't.
And that's part of why I draw that line in the sand between reviewer versus critique too, because I think what we do is review. You know, we talk about films as they're in theater or as they're hitting VOD or whatever. You know, we're not talking about the longer lasting impact of how it shapes our culture and all of those things like that. And so I think critique will always be there, and I think review will always be there too. It'll probably change shapes. I mean, we're doing a podcast. Who the hell listened to a podcast 15 years ago? Right. You know, no one, because the delivery method has changed, and it will change in 15 years from now. So I think saying that it's going away completely is, myopic.
Jim, it's interesting that you bring up sort of like how you see the same sorts of things repeated through the reviews and comments. So from a former life, I was a journalist. I wrote many an article, and I won't name names on which news outlet it was. Nothing that I write for currently, because I really don't do that much anymore. But I was given an assignment to review a certain movie, and they wanted that review the same day, and I hadn't seen the movie yet. And you know what the editor told me? Go read some other reviews online and just synthesize something and pump it out. It's fine. You don't have to have seen the movie.
Oh, hearsay testimony from Mr. Brad Harris.
There it is. There it is. And I didn't do it. I said I'm not doing the assignment. I'm sorry. And that really made them mad. But it's just crazy. And I kind of have to wonder, in a world where there's so many movies out that have to be seen and reviewed, how much of that might actually be going on. You know what I mean?
And I'm sure that is just with any type of any type of reviewing. Like, I mean, one of the things I do in my day job is we do online reviews. We help manage businesses with their online reviews, and you get quite a bit where maybe Jim had a bad experience at a restaurant, and then Brad will say, "I'm pissed off that Jim had a bad experience at that restaurant. I'm going to write the exact same negative review just to help slam this restaurant."
He's right.
Yeah,
they didn't do this and they didn't do that.
And so you do get a little bit of that as well. What I tell people with reviews too, and it's the same thing, like this kind of is very circular with the awards too, because I think there's some people that are like, Oscars are bullshit. No, Golden Globes are bullshit.
Oh boy. Yeah.
My thing is like, every awards are bullshit because all award ceremonies are based on the desires and the likes and the interests and the aesthetic of that particular voting group. And when you don't take them terribly seriously, but still just kind of enjoy them, knowing what they are, it becomes a lot more. It's a lot more fun to watch those shows. But what I tell people all the time, like when they say, like, which of these should I watch? It's like, whichever group or whichever online reviewer or whichever forum or whichever blog post most matches kind of your general personality and your general likes and your tastes, that's the person that you should be listening to for your reviews. If there's some guy who has exactly one follower and it's you, but you really respect his words, he is the absolute most correct reviewer out there. So find that guy, whoever that guy is. If he writes for a giant publication or if he's just some fucking 12-year-old like plinging away on his computer with really great opinions. Just find that guy.
But I think the other side of that, and I know we really haven't even talked about the movie at all yet. I want to say
so much for our 5-minute rant.
Yeah. Right? But the other part of that is, even if you find that reviewer that you're in love with, whatever, don't take that person's opinion in place of your own.
Oh, sure.
Go see the mother effing movie and make your own opinion. Part of the fun is matching up what you think against what the other person thinks, and maybe kind of seeing where it shakes out. You know what I mean? But see the movie, make your own opinion. Don't let someone else think for you. That's no bueno, at least in my book. But,
groupthink is never really a good thing.
Right? All right. Well, guys, what do you think? Gods of Egypt, should we get into it like squarely and fairly this time?
Let's think for ourselves and give this film a fair shake.
All right. So, Will, why don't you give us a little setup? I realize we've talked like 25 minutes already, a little bit about not much about the movie, really, beyond some of the controversy, but what's the setup? And you, as a reviewer that some people may respect the opinion of, they have Team Will t-shirts, so apparently they do. What do you think in terms of should people go see this or not?
Yeah, so the plot is as such. You've got Horace, played by
Nikolai.
Nikolai Coster-Waldau, I believe.
Yeah.
The guy that plays Jamie Lannister.
Nikolai
Jamie
Coster-Waldau.
Lannister.
We will call him Jamie Lannister, because that's honestly that's what everyone knows him as, anyways. So he's playing Horus, and he is one of the gods of Egypt, and he is ascending to the throne. But then his uncle Set, who is played by Gerard Butler, decides, I'm going to usurp his throne, and I'm going to take control of Egypt. It then falls on a young mortal boy, played by Brenton Thwaites, to help Horus regain his throne. So, should you go see this movie? If you're asking me whether or not it's worth your money, I'm going to say it's not. This is not a very good movie whatsoever. First of all, we have the issue of whitewashing, and I think this film does have a problem with that. Some of the gods are diverse, but they're mostly kind of background gods. All of your main gods, Horus, Set, Osiris, Ra, all are extremely white. Your two main mortal leads, Beck, Zaya, both extremely white. Your one mortal villain, extremely white, Rufus Sewell. So you have a couple of ethnic support characters who are there just to kind of help round things out a bit. But yeah, there's a lot of white people in Egypt, guys. But let's put all of that aside. Even if that wasn't a problem, and I think that it is, but even if it wasn't, this film is, for me, bad just on its own merits. It uses this weird CGI as the characters kind of morph into robot like battle mode. It looks fucking stupid. Like, it is one of the dumbest things I've seen in cinema in the last few years is when they go into CGI robot battle form.
Right.
You have your two main characters, the character played by Brenton Thwaites and the character played by Jamie Lannister. And I feel like for being the two main characters of this movie, probably the two most important characters, they're also probably the least interesting characters. That's a problem when the characters who we're following are extremely boring. Like, I don't care how good Blonde Aladdin is. I want to know what makes him tick. And what makes him tick in this movie are things that we've seen a million times before.
Lust.
Lust. I need my girl. There are a couple of things that, I mean, this film is just ridden with tropes. The villain, I'm going to kill my minion because I'm mad. That angry trope, that happens before. There are a couple of things that are really, really cool. And the problem is that those couple of really cool things are smaller details, and I wish we could have seen more of them.
Like women riding snakes? Come on. Is that not cool or what?
Less the rip with the women riding snakes, but one of the women things is there is and we'll talk more about it in spoilers, maybe not, but when a woman removes her bracelet at one point is a really interesting scene because of how quickly pasted that next sequence is. I thought that was very visually interesting in a film that was not very visually interesting. There were a couple of moments where you could really tell the set dresser was having a lot of fun, and I liked that. There's one grand bedroom scene with like these giant like red curtains and everything's in kind of shades of red and gold, and that was really beautiful. I loved watching that. And also we get Chadwick Boseman here. He plays this character named Toth. And this is the same dude that's going to be playing Black Panther later on in the year. So if you don't know him yet, he's going to be like a major player in like a major franchise soon enough. He has a couple of these scenes where he is just really allowed to chew every fucking line, and I love it. I wanted so much more Chadwick Boseman. Like, I was disappointed. I was actively disappointed that this movie wasn't just like, let's see how Toth handles things, because he was such an interesting character, and everyone else was so, pun intended, vanilla in comparison. So, should you go see this movie? I think no. There's a couple of redeeming elements to it, and I think in some ways that makes it even worse, because this isn't a good movie, nor is it a so bad it's good movie. It's just kind of uncomfortably blah, and that's, to me, not worth a dime.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Well, man, I don't even know how to follow I don't even know how to follow that. My gosh. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like, Jim was kind of spurring me along to see this movie, and he was like, "I know it looks terrible, but it looks like it could be one of those really good terrible movies. It's like really fun to like experience its terribleness." And you know what? I'm going to say he was partially right. I was really afraid that this movie was totally going to be I Frankenstein all over again. I think this movie is several grades better than I Frankenstein. It's still not great. You know, there were certain things that I enjoyed visually speaking. I liked some of the cool things they did. I don't want to go too far into any kind of spoiler, but like the blood of the gods and some other things I thought were neat touches. And I've always had a hard on for like Egyptian mythology, so I kind of liked some of the notions of like how the gods worked versus like the regular people and sort of their family history and disputes. It's one of the reasons I really love Stargate SG-1, actually. They have a really cool take on Egyptian mythology and aliens being part of that and where that comes from. So it's kind of interesting to see this movie kind of do its own take, and I've been comparing them. So, but I do agree. I mean, the story is pretty predictable in a lot of ways, unfortunately. Yes, there's the whole whitewashing thing. I'm like, why is the principal cast, you know, not Egyptian at all? But in counterpoint to that, I thought it was really interesting to see a lot of the gods being of different ethnic backgrounds than just white or Egyptian. You've got like Indian gods. You've got African American gods. I mean, there was kind of a broad spectrum there, even though obviously it's not the principal cast. It was kind of interesting. I'm like, huh, interesting. Hathor is this, and so yes, I think it's a problem. Absolutely. I kind of wonder if it was sort of thrown in that way, like to throw people off of that complaint. I don't know. Maybe. You also have like the giant like hordes of the same 12 slaves just duplicated over and over and over again. So there's a little bit of that going on. Will, you mentioned like the transformer effects, like when they go into their like god, forms or whatever. That was kind of ridiculous. But visually, I thought the Jamie Lannister like bird suit was kind of cool in some ways. But yeah, I mean, I think the mentality you've got to have, though, going into this movie, and I'm going to say, you know what? Don't listen to what we're telling you and take it as your own opinion. I'm going to echo that. Will hates it. I'm in the middle. Like, go see it and make your own opinion. You might walk out and think it's really fun. Who knows? I would say this one, could maybe be a rental, though. You probably don't necessarily have to go see this in the theater. It's not one of those movies that I'm going to tell my friends, like, oh, my God, guys, Gods of Egypt, you've got to see it. But I'm also not going to be one of those people online who, like, is like, oh, my God, this is the worst movie ever. And then you're like, oh, did you actually watch it? Well, no, but I read that it's the worst movie ever, so I'm not going to see it. Beating a dead camel at this point. But, yeah. So I say check it out. If you're curious, do it.
Interesting. I didn't think that's where you would come down. I actually think I'm somewhere around where you are, but maybe not quite as positive even. But I'm definitely not as negative on this movie as Will is. I think for me, this movie falls somewhere between. I'm going to try to compare it to movies that are similar in nature. Not as bad as I Frankenstein, which is kind of the bottom of the scale for me, and not as good, not as enjoyable as a movie like Pompeii, which I kind of liked. A little bit, if you guys remember that. I like Pompeii pretty well, and that's because of the story. There wasn't really a compelling story here for me to keep me hooked. I mean, the mortal protagonist, Will called him Blonde Aladdin, and his girlfriend, who was not in the movie very much, but I didn't really buy that. Every time they cut from the gods, which were semi-interesting, to this mortal story, it's like, why do I fucking care about this kid and his girlfriend? It really watered down the story and distracted from it. The setup of this movie, the first scene in front of the crowds, kind of Horus. It was Horus, right? taking his ascending to the crown, that his father was abdicating, right? Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Horus taking over from
Right.
Osiris, who is handing
Right.
him the crown.
I thought that whole scene was well staged, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be kind of cool. This is almost like an Egyptian Game of Thrones kind of thing going on here. And, you know, if they follow that path, that would be cool. But then they got into the, you know, shortly thereafter, they got into the transforming robot suits, and you're right, it kind of verged on silliness sometimes. This movie was caught in between that area of like taking itself too seriously, but not being silly enough to be interesting. Which is why I kind of dragged Brad into this movie. I'm like, you know what, this movie looks crappy, like it could be crappy enough to be fun. And you know what? It almost did that, but it didn't quite get it for me. I thought the way Gerard Butler played Set was so over the top that they could have done a lot more with that and made him, you know, even a lot more darkly comical, if you would, in a way. And they just never went there. So this movie, I think, could have been a really like campy send up of those kind of God movies. As far as the whitewashing thing, my take on it is I don't really care. As far as the gods go, they're gods. I don't believe they have to represent the cultures that they, you know, they're gods. They're like aliens. They can take any form that the story wants to. However, the main protagonist, there's no excuses to have, to me anyway, to have white actors in kind of those main mortal roles, and all of the citizens of Egypt. You know, most of them appeared to me anyway to be white. And you're right, Brad. There was some diversity amongst the gods. Maybe not enough for some to balance out the other stuff, but yeah, I didn't really care so much that the gods were not more diverse than they were. At least for me. Another thing I think that hurt this movie is this genre, I think, is kind of worn out at this point. Unless you're doing something different and exciting with it, that this movie just didn't get. It seems like kind of the same old CGI, you know, battle in the desert amongst, you know, gods and mortals, blah blah blah. We've seen it 100 times, and the trailers didn't do anything to subvert that expectation, and so it didn't pull in an audience saying, "Hey, I want to see what this movie's about." Instead, everyone's like, "Oh God, I've seen this movie so many times." They're just layering on more CGI crap on top of it, and that's kind of what we got. I can't recommend this movie though, unfortunately. I think the story is just too old. As far as the CGI goes, I want to mention, I think some of it was cool, and some of it was really, really corny. There was a scene with a vehicle that I just like rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh my God. And maybe not the one you're thinking of, guys, but it was another one in the movie. And I'm like, oh, that looks really bad. Almost like it wasn't finished.
You could almost see, I don't know if it's the exact same one, but there's one shot where, you remember like the way movies looked in like the 50s where like you would have some actors and then you would just have like what looked like, they were obviously not actually driving down the street. Yeah. There was a scene in this movie that was very much like that. Like I was very much taken out of the film and thought, these actors are nowhere near what's happening right now. It just looks like something projected behind them, and it was very obvious. And we're in an age where technology can do much better than what we saw there. Yeah.
And you're right, Will. I mean, that was a bad example, but there were some really good ones too. There was this, let's just say, a scene in a vault. I'll just say that I thought was pretty well done. And there was, that opening scene we talked about. I thought was some of the sets I thought were really cool, but again, not even enough to kind of overcome its problems. This movie needed, I think it needed something else. Like maybe it needed like Nick Cage and Samuel L. Jackson to reprise their roles from Pulp Fiction, but as gods. Now that would be cool. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Go
ahead, Brett.
I was just gonna probably do the same thing, Will. We got a live comment from
Yeah.
Francisco Salgado. But why don't you take it, Will?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Francisco writes in and says, "Sorry to disagree, guys. I love the transformation so much. Did you ever see the anime?" And I apologize in advance for butchering this. Saint Seiya. Transformations were kind of like how Saint Seiya would look in a live-action movie, and I haven't seen that anime. I think for me, I didn't mind as much the fact that they transformed. I think my problem was that it was so abrupt what they transformed from to what they transformed to. And that kind of matches like the rest of the problem with this film is that I felt like it just was kind of a little bit of everything and not anything substantial. Like even like the movie's tone, like there were times where they would suddenly turn into like a buddy comedy and like start quipping back and forth with one another. So I almost feel like if and I haven't seen this anime, and I'm interested in seeing it. I feel like maybe if they had maybe committed more to the transformations and really focused more on that as a more major part of it, I think I could have enjoyed it a little bit more. But for me, it felt like we would see these like slightly larger than regular human beings running around, and then all of a sudden, like they strapped on CGI robot armor, and it just always felt very discordant to me when that happened. But I'm going to check that anime. I'm very interested.
I don't know a lot about Egyptian mythology, but I assume that these gods have a secondary form. Like they have kind of a mortal-looking form, and then they have their animal form, where Horus was kind of like an eagle, or a hawk, and Set was I don't know what he was, like a dog or something. I have no idea, or a wolf, but maybe that's what that is. And I was trying to think, like, what if they never even transformed at all in this movie? Would it have been better? Would it have been worse? I don't know if it made much of a difference for me. I don't know. It just seemed like a complicating story element that maybe didn't need to be there.
Yeah, I think what they were trying to portray, and I get why they did this. A lot of times when you think about like the classic portrayals of Egyptian gods, it's usually body of a man holding whatever. Sometimes they would hold this reed or this ankh or whatever it was that was appropriate to whatever it was they were. But they would then have the head of something else. Like Horus was known for having like the head of an eagle or a falcon or something like that. Set had like the head of a dog, I believe.
Right.
Thoth had like a head of a crocodile, I believe. I could be wrong on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what the transformations were trying to show was, Brad shared a great image right here of some of the different, Egyptian gods, kind of a modern take on some of the classic like hieroglyphics and stuff like that. But like, they would have like the body of a man and the head of some sort of animal. And I think these transformations were trying to showcase that. I think for me, maybe it was just the CGI budget wasn't 100% there. I think with the right design, like if they had turned into like a really neat looking like eagle badass monster or like a really cool like whatever Set is, maybe I would have bought in a little bit more. I just felt like it didn't quite look real to me. I felt like I was watching like a video game cutscene sometimes.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, that's the kind of feel that it had. This movie was ambitious in terms of what it wanted to do, I think, visually, right? I mean, there were a lot of set-piece action scenes that were crammed with cool sets and or what were supposed to be cool sets and great CGI, but you could tell maybe, I mean, they did spend $150 million on this movie, but it almost is like this movie was designed to spend much more than that. And they obviously didn't. If they had it, maybe it would have looked better, but it wouldn't have done anything about the story that was very generic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Agreed. Well, one thing I want to say just before we move into a very brief spoiler section, Gerard Butler looking pretty freaking hot in this film, I will say. Has several shirtless scenes. I'm sorry, I'm a bear. It's what I do.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, there's nothing
all
wrong
for
with
the eye candy.
Like. Yeah.
So don't sell out your review to pure animal lust.
It was a bonus. You know what I mean? So I'm okay with that. But yeah. So guys, spoilers. We're going fairly long at this point, but you want to do a few minutes of spoilers? I think we probably have to, right?
Probably fair enough. I mean, I don't think we have a lot to go into, but yeah, let's do it in spoilers.
Jim, are you on board with that? Do I have
Yeah,
your?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
All
do a
right,
couple
awesome.
minutes. I think this
All
might be
right.
something we can talk
All
about.
right, so this is your official warning. We're going to spoil this movie at least for a few minutes. So if you haven't seen it yet, if you value your virginal innocence and don't want it sullied by spoilers, it's your time to step away. Come back in about maybe 10 minutes or so. Catch our plugs. But yeah, where do we want to start with spoilers?
I guess more than anything, I highlighted something beforehand, and I just want to mention it. When Hathor, which is the god that Horus was betrothed to, whatever, removes her bracelet and she's sucked through the underworld. I thought that looked really cool. And what I think worked so well about it was you have these like undead hands grasping her really quickly and like trying to pull her and stuff like that. And they moved so quickly, I didn't have a moment to really stop and look at them. So if there were any flaws in those CGI skeletal arms, I didn't have a chance to see them. I think that was smart. I think that it felt so sudden, so abrupt, it made it scarier. A few months ago, we talked about the movie Poltergeist, the remake, and I had a really hard time trying to vocalize one of my faults with a particular scene in that, and I think that this kind of showcases. This helps me this helped me out quite a bit with it. Like the fact that we weren't able to see quite as much, I think, made it more intense and more and scarier, I guess, in some ways, if that makes sense.
I like the scene that was the kind of scene at the ninth gate of whatever, when they're everyone's walking up and the big dude, the Marvel villain dude, what's his name? Oh God, from the Marvel movies, huh? The guy in the big chair.
Oh, it looks like Thanos.
Thanos, yeah, the guy that looks like
okay.
Thanos. Thanos is like, "What
Josh
do you
Brolin.
have to offer?" or whatever. And I thought that scene was pretty cool. Seeing that added a little bit of stakes to the movie, which this movie seriously needed. I don't know what you guys thought of it.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. It felt like that whole sequence felt like it was a little too, and I don't know the right way to describe this, but sometimes when a CGI movie feels very CGI, it feels a little too polished to feel real, if that makes sense. And I think maybe it veered a little bit on that, but I think at the core they had something there. I think they had a really neat design. I think the voice was really cool. I think the design for Anubis, it was Anubis, right? That was standing there and kind of like saying like, you have to offer something. Like I thought that was really neat looking. So yeah, maybe throw a couple extra bucks in the CGI kitty, so to speak, and it cleans that scene up a little bit more for me. But by and large, yeah, I'm with you, Jim.
And
hey guys,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead, Jim.
No, I was going to talk about the snake scene, right? Because that's kind of like one of the bigger set pieces in the movie with the dueling snakes, right? Now, the two women who were riding the snakes, do we know who they were? Because I think I was totally lost at that point.
They were just two. I mean, maybe they have names that are like thematic for Egyptian lore. I don't remember what they were. Right. But to me, they were just two more of like Set's assassins.
Yeah, and I think one of them was a black woman, right? An African American woman.
A start and a knot are the characters, and I have no idea who they are. I've not brushed up on that.
Yeah, it was just interesting. I thought some of the special effects in that scene were okay for a little while, but again, they try to milk it a little bit too much, and kind of run that scene until you're like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. We know this is not going to mean anything in the end. Let's get on to the next one.
Right.
Yeah, it's fairly plodding through most of the beats, I think. I actually really love the snakes, though. I thought visually they were awesome. one of them shooting fire out of its fangs instead of venom was a little weird. I was like, what? But overall, I thought it was
Dragon
cool.
snakes. Dragon snakes.
Right? They're drakes. But so Sam is having a little fun with us right now. He sent this in. Apparently, he's got multiple windows of the podcast open, and they're all not in sync with each other. So all of our voices are echoing like 50 times out of.
Oh boy!
Different. So Sam,
fantastic.
So Sam, you are really dedicated, my friend. That's funny.
No, he's just really bored.
Well, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Oh goodness.
I feel like the last thing that we should talk about, or maybe not the last thing, but the last thing that I have to talk about is Chadwick Boseman. I mentioned him in the previous section, but I think we could devote a little bit of time to him. He plays Toth, who is I'm not as brushed up on Egyptian mythology. I know he's I believe he's like crocodile-headed god, and he's like knowledge and information and kind of stuff like that. And he was so interesting between like the for me, like when he would have these really overly dramatic poses where he was like chewing the scenery at any given time. We had this like really weird like duplicate versions of him as he was like trying to make clones of himself to like consume all of this knowledge. I feel like they could have done much more with him, especially in the, of course we're in spoiler section, the Sphinx scene. I felt like he kind of under-delivered for what had been promised up to that point. But that said, like, I thought he was really quite good and quite interesting, and, you know, you always hear that word, like, scene stealer, the guy that comes on screen and immediately, like, draws attention away from everything else, and he certainly was that to me. I really liked seeing him on screen.
See, I felt the exact opposite. I thought he was annoying as hell. Like, his little affectations and, like, I felt like he was... I don't know, this movie straddles a weird line of, like, taking itself too seriously and, like, trying to be fun and sort of epically cheesy, right? And I don't know, it was just, it came across... I don't know, maybe it's just my weird funny bone. It just didn't hit me the same way. I was like, oh my god, in a movie that's already taxing my patience, now we're starting this next scene and we have all this shit going on and we have to do, like, it just, maybe I was just over it at that point, Will. I don't know, but it just, I don't think it hit me the same way.
Yeah, I kind of liked him in this movie. I mean, I saw, if you guys remember, we reviewed, what was the movie? Get On Up, was that the name of the movie? The James Brown biopic movie where Chadwick Boseman was James Brown.
Yes, he was so good in that. Oh my god.
And I thought he was okay in that movie, and here, you know, he's more of a supporting character. You know, he's not really one of the main characters. But yeah, I thought he was fine. I didn't have any issues with him. Who played Ra? Do we know?
Oh, it was Jeffrey Rush?
Yeah, it was Jeffrey Rush. Jeffrey Rush played Ra. Brad, you got a kick out of the flat Earth scene?
I did, and that was the last thing I wanted to mention. So I was, you know, I'm a really big like history, mythology buff, and I loved when Ra's like pulling the chain on the sun, and all of a sudden we see, check it out, guys, the Earth is flat. And one side is dark and one side is light, and then Demon Apophis, the big worm eater thing from Tremors and Star Trek Voyager, is suddenly trying to eat the world. I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting part of this movie, and I think that's maybe part of why this movie annoyed me. Not that scene itself, but more like I feel like this isn't a bad director. You'd mentioned some of the movies he had done before, Crow, Dark City, etc. He's a solid director, and there are a lot of fun ideas at play here. I feel like he didn't commit to enough of them as much as he should have. I feel like he didn't really focus on the elements that could have made his story more interesting, and I think he he unfortunately ended up with a couple of milquetoast lead characters that just didn't draw us through the movie as much as they could. I think that's what frustrates me the most about this type of movie, because I consider it to be a bad movie that could have been a good movie if like rewritten. There's some movies that are just like dead on arrival. Like there's no way this film could have possibly ever been good. But I think if a few things had been changed, maybe I'd be changing my tune here, and that's frustrating. That's frustrating to me.
What did you guys think of the effect of the size difference between the gods and the mortals? That's something we really haven't touched on yet. But I was kind of surprised by that at the beginning of the movie. I'm like, wait a minute, something's really off here on the scale. Oh, I get what they're getting at. The gods are. I thought that was kind of cool at the beginning of the movie. I thought it was fairly well handled most of the way through. What did you guys think of that?
Brad?
You know, I actually thought it was kind of interesting. You know, when you look at, you know, old hieroglyphics and stuff, right? I mean, there is a size difference between, like, mortals and gods. So, at least in some of them. So to see it sort of played out that way on screen, at first it was like a little like, ugh, really, this is dumb. But then, like, the more and more I thought about it, even going back, like, I've been having a good time just looking at, like, pictures of hieroglyphics today, like, in preparation for the show. I was going back and checking them out. And, like, totally, like, you can see a size difference in some of them between, like, the mortal followers and the gods. So, you know, I didn't think it was that great when I saw the movie, but now I'm kind of like, interesting choice, those of you who made that choice, because that's kind of in line, you know? So in retrospect, I guess it kind of works for me now. When I saw the movie, not as much.
Yeah, it's an idea that I think I respect the idea. I think that when they saw the first set of dailies, they should have been like, "Oh shit, no, let's backtrack on this," because I think it's an idea that looks better on paper than it looks on film. Like when like Brad, you're absolutely right. Like when you look at like some of those depictions, like yeah, it totally makes sense. But there were a lot of scenes where it almost looked. So we have a larger character next to a smaller character, and because the scale is sometimes a little bit weird, you just have two characters next to each other. There were times that actually reminded me a little bit more of like a human sitting next to a hobbit, as opposed to a human sitting next to an Egyptian god. Like my brain kind of scaled the other direction, just because of the way they portrayed some things. And again, yeah, and it made it a little bit silly. I was like, oh, look at Beck, he's so cute and adorable. It's like, no, he's a human being. He's like my size. Like you know, like minus like 100 pounds probably, but he's like my size. But no, like the odds are super large. I don't know. It came across a little weird.
Yeah, reminded me of the kid from the Blue Lagoon.
Hey guys, here's some ancient hieroglyphics that are eerily similar to today's world.
Oh my God.
These hieroglyphics are making me feel pretty furiosa.
Right?
Mad even.
Anyway, sorry. But yeah, Jim, so did it work for you though? Is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a cool idea initially. As the movie went on, I guess you didn't really notice it as much. Maybe, like you said, Will, you kind of scaled the other way a little bit. And maybe it was less noticeable because we got used to it. But when I first saw it, it took me by surprise. It took me out of the movie even a little bit. Like, what are they doing here? Oh, I get it. The gods are, you know, much larger in stature than the mortals. And I don't know. Again, I don't know my Egyptian mythology or what the scale is supposed to be, but they just seemed like bigger humans to me. I don't know. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from. You know, in a way, like, unless they were doing the whole like god form transform thing, I mean, they did just look human. You know, unless they were bleeding liquid gold, which I thought was kind of cool. You know what I mean? It's not like they looked visually distinctive except for their size and maybe how ornately they were dressed. You know what I mean? So I can see where you're coming from.
It definitely looked like gold. It looked like gold paint. It was like
yeah, it did.
It did.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, even that's an idea. Like, oh, the gods bleed gold. Cool. Yeah, I'm down for that. Let me see how it looks on the screen. Oh, it looks a little silly.
Not so great.
Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of, and maybe that's where I come down on this film. Like, I think a lot of the ideas work better on paper than they did in execution. And the problem is that we paid money to go see the executed product. So there was some sort of disconnect between script and screen that just didn't work as well as I think it could have.
Mm.
I think so.
Yeah. Yep. I think you're right. Well, guys, I think we've bled the Godwell dry at this point. Are we ready to dig into some plugs here? What do we think?
Let's do it.
All right. Awesome. Good. Hey, so it was my birthday recently, and so I was watching some films that I like to watch around my birthday time, and one of those movies just happened to be The Princess Bride. I watch it every year around my birthday. I only watch it once a year because I don't want that movie. I don't want that movie to ever outstay its welcome in my heart. And you know, I know I have a weird funny bone, guys. I know I do. You guys watch movies that you like laugh your asses off, and I'm scratching my head like, what the fuck did I just watch? But something about this movie just trips like every trigger I have. Like, even my sister was like, you know, I don't think I've ever heard you laugh at a movie that much. And I'm like, I don't know what it is. I just love this film. Anyway, it's available on Blu-ray. There was a 25th anniversary edition, which, oh my god, that makes me feel old. That has been totally like remastered and cleaned up, and it looks frickin' amazing. So if it's been a while since you have watched The Princess Bride, if you love it as much as I do, grab it. It's on Amazon right now for like $9.99. Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
Great Brad, yeah, you don't have to apologize for laughing at that movie. I think it is, for me, it's one of my it is a hands down favorite movie for me as well. So you don't have to apologize for that. I'm right there with you. Like, I say very often, probably once a week at some point or another to someone, I say, have fun storming the castle to someone. And of course, they always just look at me funny, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to explain it. But yeah, you don't have to apologize for that one, Brad, because I'm nodding my head thinking, yep, great movie.
Great film.
All right.
Yeah, great film.
Glad I'm not alone. All right. Will, what about you? What's your plug?
My plug for this week is a documentary, kind of. Yeah, I guess we'll call it a documentary that I've been meaning to catch up to. I finally got a chance to catch it in theaters, and it's the new Michael Moore documentary called Where to Invade Next. And the reason I say that it's kind of a documentary is he even positions the movie as a bit of a comedy. Man, this movie is really good. I have a soft spot towards Michael Moore's delivery style. I think he's one of the few people that can get away with injecting himself into his documentaries. I think a lot of documentarians, it doesn't go very far, but I think he does quite a good job with it. But this one here feels like it covers a lot of very poignant, topical topics in a way that both makes you feel like I have no hope left, and then also like, oh my gosh, I'm very optimistic because there is some hope. To give you, to kind of put an example around that, I saw this thing, and it was a small screening when I saw it. I maybe saw it with like 15 other people. No shit, at least a third of the audience at certain points in the film, like I just heard like bawling, like just people like crying all around me through this movie. And then when the funny parts, you know, it felt like there were 40 to 100 people in this theater as opposed to like the 10 to 15 that were actually there. It got a really big reaction out of them. It got a really big reaction out of me. If you like documentaries, if you think that Michael Moore has some interesting things to say, I think Where to Invade Next is certainly worth watching. Even if you're not someone that's normally a fan of his, I think that he has a lot of interesting things to say here, and I strongly recommend it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've heard some good things about this movie. I have to say I'm kind of in the latter camp. I do love documentaries. I love well-done documentaries. I even love some of Michael Moore's older documentaries. So I'm kind of anxious to see this one, to see if he can if he keeps it less overtly political and less overtly, politic bashing, then I may enjoy it. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes when I get to this movie.
Yeah, this isn't as much a politic bashing one. I mean, it's hard to. This is a documentary about him going to different countries to kind of like playfully say like these are the things that we should take back home and implement here. So it's hard to say that there's no politics there because it's all based around that. But without giving away too much, I left the theater feeling extremely optimistic and uplifted and like, holy shit, yeah, we can do this. And that was fun. I didn't feel torn down. I felt built up.
Very cool.
I just got a message from my sister who was here for my birthday weekend by surprise, all the way from Michigan.
Okay.
And she saw Gods of Egypt with us. She's on a bus right now on the last leg of her trip home, and she says, "Are you guys trashing Gods of Egypt yet?"
Yes.
Jesse, you may watch this later. I love you. Yes, we have trashed it a little bit, I guess, maybe a smidge. But anyway. All right. Well, guys, I think that wraps us for this week. I just wanted to say we may have a special bonus episode, a bonus interview with someone special to us. Maybe to you. I won't say more. But check that out later this week. We'll have that up. And for next week, I don't know what we're doing yet.
I think Zootopia is next week.
Is it Zootopia?
If I remember
That's
correctly.
right. I could look up like our master spreadsheet of planning +5, but yeah, I think Zootopia sounds right. And then, oh my God, South by Southwest is coming up. We're gonna be in the same physical space in like very soon.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see you guys. Seriously, it's like 10, 11 days away.
11 days, yeah.
I don't know if I'm excited to see Zootopia or not. As a film, it looks fine, but just like knowing that there's a chance. I think I put this out already, but like the fact that like I'm going to be.
Will it be whitewashed?
I don't know if it's going to be whitewashed. I'm going to be sitting between like a mother with like her 4-year-old and her 8-year-old on one side, and then I'm going to be sitting next to a guy that runs like a furry erotic porn like website on my other side, and I'm going to have to realize that like there are two very like different fan bases for this film, and I'm neither. So I guess we'll see how that goes.
I admit I don't know a lot about the furry community, but you think they will be interested in this movie?
From what I've gathered already from the internet, yes, they already are.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so there's already like stuff like floating around like inappropriate pictures floating around on Facebook
of these characters
of the sloth characters doing it. I'm like, oh my God!
Oh, really? I hope they're GIFs.
It's like one frame every 12 seconds.
This furry porn is loading way too slow.
Sloth porn?
Yeah.
Is it, you know what's the rule? If you can think of it, it's out there.
That feels so dirty.
I have a feeling we're going to have a really fun review next week.
Well, thank God.
So, I'll be here in my fursuit, and
okay. We're hearing from someone right now, and I will redact the name because it's kind of personal. But we are hearing from a fan of the show who says that the furry folks are in love with Zootopia, and that there's a lot more out there than just what we're seeing on Facebook. So apparently it's a thing.
We want to see it, so please send it.
No, not to me, not to Jim at MovieBearsPodcast.com.
No, that's fine with me. I'm cool with seeing that.
But that's what's interesting about. It's exciting that so many different people from so many different walks of life are so excited about a film for so many different reasons, and it's exciting for us because we fall right in the middle. Maybe we'll get to be those objective reviewers that director Alex Proyas was talking about before.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But Zootopia in theaters this weekend. Go with friends. Don't be that creepy guy in a trench coat sitting there by yourself, okay? So, that'd be great. Anyway, this person, Jim, says that he's going to send you a naked, horny, fat cheetah.
Okay. All right.
So, Jim at MovieBearsPodcast.com. There you go.
I'll be watching for that one.
All right. Well, that wraps us for this week. We're putting a bird on it, so to speak. We're wrapping it up in a bow.
Put a bird on it.
We're done. Thank you so much for all of you who hung out with us live. It was great having you with us tonight. I always love it when you all chime in. You help shape the show and make it more fun and take it in really weird cheetah directions, I guess. But I hope you have enjoyed this episode. We have a whole back catalog of episodes, too, that you can find on MovieBearsPodcast.com and iTunes, on Stitcher Radio. Make sure and check out our past episodes. And, guys, big news.
What?
Big news.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm ready.
We are quickly approaching the 3,000 like mark. We're almost there. We are literally like, let me look at the number because it's updated.
That's up in like This American Life territory.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I look at some of the other podcasts that are like on NPR or have been around for 20 years that don't have that many. And not that I want to pat ourselves on the back too much. I really just want to say, A, it's cool for me. I like it. But B, we're 5 away from giving out a Fandango gift card. So if you are lucky number 3,000, we will reach out to you on Facebook. We will announce your name on the show. So if you're listening and you have not liked us on Facebook yet, make sure, go to the page. And you could be going to see a movie on us soon. Anyway. Take it easy, everyone. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Good. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ha. Ha. Ha.